Hi, and welcome to What Matters This Week. And joining us right now from Burlington is Vermont Attorney General TJ Donovan. TJ, you've agreed to speak with us today about the general subject, I know, of social media for young people, one that I know is very dear to your heart, even aside from the events of the last week, which I will get to in a moment. But before we do, you and more than 50 other U.S. attorneys general, counterparts of yours in other states and U.S. territories, have done something very crucial regarding social media. And for anyone that may not recall what that is, why don't you let people know what that would be?
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me. Yes, not only earlier this week, but in fact, a few weeks ago, we've now sent 2 letters out regarding social media and kids. The first was to Facebook, asking them not to create an Instagram for kids because of the harm it creates to kids. It is clear that there is a real negative impact and real harm to kids based on social media, whether it is self-harm, whether it is depression, whether it is anxiety. There is a growing body of research that correlates those harmful impacts with the use of social media in young kids because they're not ready to navigate it. That's thing one. Thing two, given what happened in Washington this week with a whistleblower from Facebook testifying in front of the US Senate, we sent a letter to the Senate applauding them for holding those congressional hearings and asking for more oversight on these social media platforms. And really what we said was when the profits of these social media companies comes at the expense of the well-being of our kids, that's the time for government to intervene.
Indeed. And as you mentioned, you sent the first of these pieces of correspondence even before this week's events, which I will get to in a moment. But you've mentioned publicly on a number of occasions, too, that you have seen and have tried to, fight to the best of your ability against what you see as deleterious effects of social media or potential for them in your own home.
Well, look, I have 2 kids. I certainly have concerns about the use of technology for my kids. Frankly, they're too young to use it, so we don't allow it. I worry that young kids don't understand, frankly, what privacy means in the digital age. As it was said to me, when you talk about these algorithms which drive social media, and let's talk about the business model of social media, it is collecting our data and our information, young people's information, and selling it to advertisers and other companies. Kids don't understand that. Frankly, not a lot of adults understand that. And we need to raise awareness and educate folks not only about the business model, but understanding the impact it has on children. And so, as somebody said to me, Mike, that really stopped me in my tracks, they said, when it comes to young people and algorithms, we become our algorithms, and the algorithm follows you. Now, that was pretty scary to hear. And so we're in this new age, this new economy, really this technological revolution, there's many benefits to it. Let's be clear. Let's be very clear about it. But we have to balance that with consumer protection. We have to balance that with child protection. And that's the purpose of the letters that we've sent and some other work we're doing, not only in the Vermont Attorney General's office, but with our colleagues around the country.
You mentioned also, TJ, that one of the 2 pieces of correspondence you've been talking about ended up being sent after Frances Haugen, former Facebook employee who leaked a trove of documents to the Wall Street Journal and then revealed herself as having been the source of that material to 60 Minutes last week and then testifying before Congress this week. Was there anything about either her interview with 60 Minutes, what we've all seen and heard from that, or her testimony earlier in the week that took you aback at all, surprised you?
Well, I think like anything, question of what did companies know and when did they know? And when was this information disclosed? And did they continue to invest in a business model that was harmful for kids? I think that's a central question here. And when you know that something is harmful to children, but you continue to engage in that type of business practice in an effort, I would argue, to grow your next generation of customers, that's troubling. I think if you look historically, all you have to do is look at the tobacco litigation where Joe Camel, that got banned because it was a direct message to kids. And it was a direct message to kids that was to use a product that was harmful to kids. And I think you see an analogy here in social media. And so, it's too early to say what happens next, other than to simply say that this is an issue that certainly as Attorney General, but also as a father, I worry about social media. It's a powerful tool. And, like anything else, when we're talking about products that carry some risk and harm with it, there's regulation in place. When you think about driving a car, you got to take a test, you got to get a license. We don't let you vote till you're 18, and a whole host of issues that we've already said this could be harmful conduct. We really want people to be mature before they use it. I'm not sure we've had that conversation yet when it comes to social media, but what we're learning is that we need to have that conversation because of the harmful impact it's having on kids. Look, when kids are hurting themselves because of social media and the images that they see that they can't compete with, and let's be clear, a lot of these images are curated images. It's not real. It has a real impact on one's anxiety, on their mental well-being. And we know this, mental health is critically important. And these are real issues when we talk about suicide, when we talk about depression. These are real health issues. And we got to make sure that these companies are listening to us and to our constituents in our states.
TJ, you, of course, are far from the only person with rather severe concerns about social media, not just regarding their effects upon young people, but upon just about all facets of American society. The Illinois Senator Dick Durbin happened to say publicly earlier this week, Facebook and big tech are facing their big tobacco moment. You made allusions to similar kind of a moment a few moments ago yourself. It's especially interesting to hear that coming from you, given that you have litigated against both. So you believe that that is an apt comparison that he would have made?
Yeah, I think so. And I think when you look at not only tobacco, when you look at, frankly, opiates, another case that we're actively involved in, and when you look again at products that are harmful, the role of the Attorney General is to provide consumer protection. And I think when we talk about big tech, look, again, we acknowledge we're in a technological revolution, as I said, and there's many benefits. There's many benefits to this. But we may get to a point where we're at a too big to fail moment when it comes to some of these companies. And the aggregation of the data and the information that they control over people, it's incredibly powerful. So this is something that I think you're going to have a growing consensus, not only from policy leaders in Congress and state houses to consumer protection advocates to attorneys general, and frankly, to parents who are going to drive this. And I don't have all the answers. And there's far smarter people than me who are really the subject matter experts on this. But when I hear stories of kids who are suffering as a result of this, look, being a kid is hard enough. Being a teenager, really hard, and those challenges that come with it. Let's make it easier for kids, not harder. And that's where I'm coming from on this.
Indeed. TJ, there's just one more aspect of this I would like to bring up before we call it a day here. That being that, of course, Congress has had very well publicized hearings having to do with not just big tech generally, but Facebook specifically in the past. And CEO Mark Zuckerberg has testified at them on more than one occasion, I might add. Do you see this as a different moment?
Well, we'll see. I think it's too early to tell. And as somebody once remarked, a week is a long time in politics. So let's see what happens after this week. But I think there's a real energy in the community here in Vermont and elsewhere to find some workable solutions where we can have the positives of social media, we can have the benefits of technology, but it's balanced with consumer protections, mostly protecting our children.
I seem to recognize that kind of community energy myself, TJ. It's TJ Donovan, Vermont Attorney General. Thank you for taking the time to join us this weekend, and we'll have more of What Matters This Week for you in just a moment.